C, science celeb Albert Einstein's theory relating to the maximum number of times you can drop your toaster in the bath before you should give up your attempts to make crunchy water? Or is it D, the government's new COVID regulation? A, B, C, or D?
Oh, well...
I mean, I like them all.
Gonna have to choose.
But I think, sadly, it's D. It's the government's COVID regulation. And there's a surprising number of rules of 6, aren't there? Which I didn't know about today. In comedy, there's a rule of 3. But this government apparently have just brought in the rule of 6, which I think makes them twice as funny as us. Is that right?
It's quite depressing, isn't it, when you do sort of think, all right, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go out, I'm going to socialise tonight, and then you realise you can't actually get together 6 people. That's my life. I'm in my 40s now. A couple of years ago, I did a proper cull, and I recommend it. I did. What really, I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing when he suddenly started talking about his moonshot idea. You know, his idea that we'll all be testing each other, well, not each other, ourselves, presumably. I don't know, do what you like, we'll test each other, that's fine. But, you know, doing it every day, and to call it a moonshot, you might as well call it my unicorn tier plan. You know, it's just...
The moonshot's interesting. I think what the government means when it uses the term moonshot is that the test results are going to be faked in a studio in Texas.
As public health messaging goes, it is actually a bit of an improvement than earlier in the week, the extraordinarily creepy "don't kill your gran."
Yeah, but it's a good, simple message, isn't it?
It's such a weird message because 20-somethings are now catching COVID, their COVID cases. But I think 20-somethings have got every right to turn around to 18-somethings and say, I don't see you getting that bothered about super gonorrhea.
So are you saying, Alan, that you think people should be killing their grannies? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's another problem, isn't it? Because people are very suggestible, and we all know that if you say don't think of an elephant, everybody thinks of an elephant.
And also, we need to give the government credit. It needs to be balanced on this series, as we keep hearing, and making the UK a laughing stock is the closest the government has yet come to doing anything to support the beleaguered UK comedy industry. So, it's not much, but it's a start. It will come from that.
My favourite review of COVID-19 was the French writer Michel Houellebecq, who said he thought it was banal. He said it's not even sexually transmitted.
The rule of 6, correct, was option D, the government's new COVID regulation. From next Monday, you'll only be allowed to meet in groups of up to 6, with some exceptions. For example, going to school, work, or transport, organise small weddings, funerals, being a government advisor, or if you just can't really be asked. It's going to be quite tricky for families. You have to, reclassify your family gathering as a wedding or a funeral. It's just for the afternoon, Uncle Terry. Think of it as a game of hide and seek. Or as an organised sports team, can Granny play scrum half? Might lack a bit of pace on the break. We could probably organise a backline. There's no substitute for experience anyway. I digress. So since it was the rule of 6, that's 6 points to Team Obey, to Angela and Alan, and it's time for our first question from a member of the audience. Do we have Pauline Leftly here? I mean, to be honest, I know people will say we've only chosen Pauline Leftly because of her surname.
Hello?
Hi, Pauline, what is your question for our panellists?
My question is, would you be prepared to have the Russian COVID vaccine?
Are you offering?
I would. I think Putin is the world's greatest human, so I'd have to fear. Look at me, good one.
Or you're going to have to show some working on that one, Athena.
Hey, come on, Andy, say what you like about Vladimir Putin. Actually, don't, he's very clear about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're ever going to choose together. It's going to come on the end of an umbrella when you want to bridge, isn't it?
So, Athena, can you just fill us in? What do you love about Mr. Putin?
Oh, I wasn't prepared to expand on that. It's just
He knows how to handle a horse. We've got to give him that.
what can I say? I mean, he bears his chest, he rides a horse. I mean, what's not to love? Hey, they're athletes. Maybe the vaccines will give me a six-pack.
That brings us to the halfway point. The scores are 7 to Angela and Alan on Team Bay, 3 to Hugo and Athena on Team Flout. But since the stories have been about Brexit and COVID, and we don't really know how they're going to pan out for at least the next 10 or 20 years, I'm going to take the score back to 0-0. You'll remark the show in the year 2040 and question 3 with the score intriguingly locked at 0-0. This goes to Team Bay, to Alan and Angela. Who has been complaining about how other people have been complaining?
Oh, I think I know this. I think this is Everett's friends, Extinction Rebellion, who blockaded some printing presses to the newspapers, largely from right-wing press, couldn't get to the newsagents, which, if you are interested in nuance, you might think is perhaps like a modern version of book burning. I do think Extinction Rebellion perhaps looked at Nazi book burning, and the thing that troubles them most is the emissions. But before anybody gives me any problem, I'm not one of those climate denying horror shows. I actually agree a lot with their message. I just don't always agree with what they do to get it across. I agree with that thing that people say: reduce, reuse, recycle. That's very much the approach I take to writing comedy. But they get bad press and good, don't they? Because their views, their systems are very provocative. Like when they first came to my awareness, it was when they glued one of their protesters to the Docklands Line Railway in London. For any fans, one of the most efficient methods of public transport on earth.
What, being glued to a train?
They shut it down and lots of people couldn't get to work and all that stuff. And I remember it very vividly because it really polarised amongst my friendships. My middle class friends seemed to be like, oh, this is great, they're raising awareness for an issue that there's not enough awareness about, climate change. And my working class friends were a bit more like, I wonder what glue that is. Stick human flesh to a tube door. That is a good glue, and it's worth knowing what brand it is. It's a complicated issue, though, isn't it? I don't want you to think that I agree with all of their message, because one thing I like to do before jumping on a bandwagon is read the small print about where the bandwagon might be going.
Never check that timetable.
Extinction Rebellion do that sneaky thing like the voiceover on an advert where it's all like, oh, the environment, and then it talks really fast, where they go, your stocks may go up as well as down. They do that, where it's like, and also we want to destroy capitalism. And you go, hang on. I'm not up for that. That's not, I mean, I know capitalism is flawed, but speaking generally, I think it works out better for people and the environment than non-capitalism, as in, humans being starving.
Yeah, Chernobyl wasn't great for the environment, was it?
Or Venezuela, where people got so hungry they ate the zoo animals. That's probably not great for the planet overall, is it?
Or for the kids on a day out in the zoo.
I'm with Alan. I think their message is good, but their means is sometimes questionable. Although I didn't really object to what they did with the papers. I just thought they should have done all the things because there's disinformation across the spectrum. I find it quite funny that people are now thinking of ways to